What's up, everyone? This is an exciting interview that's been a couple years in the making. We were just reflecting on that. And I'm really excited to introduce Michelle Risi, who is a Forbes-published CEO and the founder of the Aligned Agent Academy and many other things. Michelle, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you, Paul?
I'm fantastic. I'm ready to jump into this. People are markets at the point of this recording is, let's say, slowing down a little bit, and these are actually moments when things slow down, you can actually think straight and work on your systems and really reflect. Am I on the right path? And we'll get into all of that today. But just as an intro, why don't you talk about like the state of where you're at, given sort of this market in like the summer of 2022 and the things that have you excited about the things you're doing. I think context is important because, again, people might be a little bit nervous about the market slowdown. How is that? Let's call it a silver lining for you. And maybe that gives you a chance to talk more about your brokerage and all the things that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, any kind of change in the market prompts a bit of a fear response in most people, clients and agents and mortgage brokers, any business owner really, right? Because it triggers that fear of the change and what is that going to look like? And we all want to have the crystal ball. Unfortunately, we don't have it. And so what we're seeing right now, what I'm seeing right now is that there's a lot of panic. Oh my gosh, what does this mean? Does this mean we're not going to be able to grow our businesses? Are our clients going to default? Like, what is all of this happening? And so I'm seeing a lot of the fear responses come out, which for me, because my passion is in being able to really reduce the overwhelm and help people really just think clearly about things and be really, logical about their steps and decisions. That to me is the opportunity that I get to come in and say, okay, let's stop. And you and I chatted a little bit about that, right? It's let's kind of stop and put things in perspective. At the end of the day, there's always going to be a need. Markets, it doesn't matter what the interest rates are doing. It doesn't matter what the markets are doing. There's always going to be people that need to buy and sell, which means there's always going to be an opportunity for us to be able to do what we do best. But when we get clouded or distracted by thinking that, all of our success hinges on what's happening in the market, then we lose our power, right? We end up giving that power away, and then we end up panicking instead of just doing the work that we're supposed to be doing. And that's just showing up for our clients and being there for them.
Yeah, no, I mean 100%. And let's just get into like, I don't know, I like to do like use cases, stories. So like I'm personally, let's say I'm an overwhelmed mortgage broker on Paul's team, and then I have a referral partner who's this awesome realtor on your team, and we just had a meeting, and like, yeah, there's crickets. People just say on the phone, "Oh, I'm just waiting it out. I feel like a broken record." I'm pushing harder, but I just feel like maybe it's a waste of energy. Like, what do I do? And I'm a little overwhelmed, but I'm also trying to think of like, I have the energy, but like, where should I focus my efforts as the mortgage broker and with my realtor friend?
Yeah. And that's a really great scenario. I think it's playing out more than what we realize. I think the first thing to understand is that when people are faced with uncertainty, they're not going to be quick to make decisions. So, when we were in a very heated market, it was quick to act, right? And so, that was very easy to manage. But, if you're someone on Paul's team or you're one of our realtors, right? And now ever you're going, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't be doing this anymore, or it's not working anymore. I think we have to stop and really put ourselves in the mind of the consumer, the client. And once you can empathize with where they're sitting, all of a sudden you can see, well, they're not ready to make a decision, not because they're never going to be ready. It's just they don't have enough information yet, right? They need to have a little bit more clarity. We all do in order to make a decision. So I think we have to first, flip the switch a little bit,
Hmm.
put ourselves in their position and say, if that was me and I was faced with this decision, would I be quick to make a decision right now on what to do? So what can I do to empower them? What can I do to move them through the sales process? And I think that's the part that we miss, especially in heated markets where things happen very quickly. We miss out on that process of, well, what's the next step? What am I moving people towards? So there's that piece, and then there's the stop letting everything else, all that noise, distract you. Just get to work. Just focus on what is most important. And that's being visible for your clients, focusing on your lead generation, focusing on your follow up and conversions, and really demonstrating value. And like you said, when you opened up, it's a perfect opportunity to reassess your business. and to
Mhm.
start doing those audits and seeing what's been working, what's not working, right? We have to be adaptable. We can't just think that
Mhm.
what we did 6 months ago is going to continue to work.
So you're saying that, okay, so I have a bunch of scripts that I've made and I have a ton of leads I just haven't got around to. And I feel like half of them are probably moved on anyways. This is again what I'm thinking, and I may or may not be
Sure.
right. So as far as like I'm gonna plan tomorrow out, and you know what? I'm gonna just like get to work on the fundamental things that I learned about in your academy and every barely manager told me to do, but maybe I procrastinated a bit, and then I'm going to do a bit of seeing what works and what doesn't. How would you recommend I schedule my day? And let's have the scenario of like I'm someone who's a year into the market. I don't know. I've almost got to six figures, not quite. I have a bit of a pipeline. I have some systems. I know my shit for sure. Like I've done enough where I feel confident. What do you think is like an ideal way to schedule your day in terms of like building your business versus doing busy work, and then at the same time carving out moments to again like see what's working? Is that like I just do like a 2 hour deep dive to like look at metrics, or what's like the planning component sandwiched in with like the essential activity habits, and that could be a
Yeah.
segue into other things, but like I'd love to get something super tangible. I know it's hard to generalize, but if you were after your first year, what do you wish you would have done?
Yeah, I think for me, what's always worked for me is to pause and take some sort of assessment. So
Hmm.
I'm a very big believer in using things like DISC assessments. I think, the power of self awareness as an entrepreneur is huge. It's something that we don't often put enough emphasis on. And the more you understand yourself, the more you can start building in systems and strategy that work for you. In the
Hmm.
absence of that, you end up getting caught up in what I call the follow the leader, right? Which
Hmm.
is what we do when we first start our businesses naturally, right? We have what's known as mirror neurons in our brain. It's the reason why when you're, with a baby and you stick your tongue out and they
Hmm.
mirror that, that's its role. It's to help us to learn. But at some point we have to make the shift into the CEO. And we can't do that if we don't have that level of self-awareness. And so to
Hmm.
me, those DISC assessments are huge. Any kind of action or assessment tool like that you
Hmm.
can take that's going to help you go, oh yeah, that's who I am.
Hmm.
Oh yeah, that's why I started. Or oh yeah, those are my strengths, because we lose sight of that, right?
Mhm,
When we're busy working with people and we're busy reacting to the markets. So I think that would be the first place I would start,
mhm,
because that then is going to help to set those reminders of, am I somebody that needs to be super scheduled?
mhm,
Or am I somebody that needs to have a little bit of flexibility in my day? And
mhm,
where are my strengths? Am I somebody that's the hunter gatherer, or do I do better on the lead follow up side of things? Right. And when you can remind yourself of where your strengths are, then you can align. Right. And
mhm,
that then leads to, what is my day going to look like?
mhm,
We all know those main core pillars in our business. If we're not generating leads and speaking to people, do we really have a business, right? We can spend all the time in the world working on our systems and follow up campaigns and social media. But if you don't have people to work with, you don't have anything in
mhm,
our industry, because
mhm,
it is a very people, based industry. So
mhm,
I think that's where I would really start, is if you've been coming off of the high of what that,
mhm,
this last market presented to us, then it's time to recenter yourself. And it's time to anchor into, okay, what do I want? What am I good at? What is my zone of genius? What do clients come to me for? What's working? What's not going to work? And doing that whole assessment. And in terms of structuring your day, come back to the basics. We need routine. I think that's another piece that we've been missing out on, is we've been so reactive that
mhm,
routine has kind of gone out the window. And now is the opportunity to really establish that again. So set up your schedule, pick the three top priorities that you want to complete
mhm,
tomorrow. Really build in the structure, because I think that's what we need during times of uncertainty.
mhm. I think that on the note of a disc assessment or figuring out your personality, I mean, from a sales standpoint, when you know what energy and vibes you give off,
Yeah.
you also can discern what clients will lean into that, and also what clients of a different personality type may you have to adjust your tone. So for me, I may speak a little slower. I may use more colloquial language if they're more of a chill person. I may be more like, let's make this happen, let's win this game, if it's more of a, type A person, right? So I think that's actually important for sales, is to as you have the self-awareness of yourself, you know how to be a chameleon with different, leads, because that's actually really
Yeah.
important, is speaking their language, and you can
Absolutely.
lose
Well, they
track of
say
that, right?
they say you can only meet people where you are, right? The
Mhm,
depth that you know yourself is the depth that you're going to be able to relate and connect with other people. So that's the first piece. And the second piece, you hit it on the nose, actually. This week's YouTube video that I just launched
mhm,
is all about how to better your lead conversion, and I use the
mhm,
DISC framework because
mhm,
not everybody communicates the same way. And I think that's the piece that we find in sales often. It's like, say it like this, use this script, this is how you deliver the message, but not everybody's going to respond to that. And I think, take all of that away from it, what is really called upon you for, and that is to be able to deliver what that person needs to hear in the way that they need to hear it. And that
mhm,
goes with any kind of opening conversation or closing conversation. So you have to be able to speed read people so that you can deliver your message, you can communicate effectively, you can close them the way they need to be closed, not the way it's
mm.
comfortable for you to close.
I love it. I got a fun, spontaneous, game for you. You ready?
Uh-oh,
You're
let's
like,
go.
"Oh, no."
Okay, my dispersonality is not spontaneous, okay? It's
Yeah,
all
well,
good, let's go.
there you go, there you go. Let's say, I'm a lead and you just called me, and like, we've spoken before, and I don't know, like, given this market, I'm a little scared, and I guess you're kinda doing a discovery call on me. I mean, you kind of talked
Mhm,
to me in passing, but you really wanna assess, is Paul what are Paul's, I guess, concerns, or where's he at? And you wanna assess if I'm worth following up with, how serious I am. This goes into, I think, just I talk a lot about, how do you qualify someone out? In other words, they're not going to be ready for a while, or they're not my personality type. I'm going to respectfully say, great to connect, reach out anytime. But I think there's a lot of beauty in actually filtering people out. So maybe you filter me out, maybe you filter me in, but you have like a common discovery process on that first call that you implore agents to do. And maybe it's them being more of a listener than a talker. I would just love to see if there's any flavor you can give us here, any taste preview on like a cold lead that you kind of barely know, and you want to suss them out, see where.
yeah. I think my first piece of advice is I probably wouldn't make the decision right there and then.
Mm,
I think understanding that some people are going to be very upfront and some people won't.
mm,
I wouldn't expect that I would know right away.
mhm,
Sometimes you do, right? Sometimes you just know that there's going to be a personality conflict, and
mhm,
you're willing to walk away from that. But I
mhm,
think when you're speaking with people, again, it's understanding where they're coming from, because
mhm,
that's the decision that they're making the place from.
mhm,
So I might ask questions like, "What's going on?
mhm,
Tell me what it is that you're concerned about.
mhm,
What's freaking you out about the announcements that you're hearing on the news? Let me see if I can dispel some of that for you.
mhm, mhm,
Or if I'm not the right person, I'd really love for you to be able to speak to this person." I think it's a balance between asking the right questions
mhm,
and being able to deliver information that's going to empower them to make a decision, right? Because
mhm,
otherwise, people come into a conversation cold, closed off.
mhm,
Nobody wants to show their cards,
mhm,
right? Everybody's been trained to have poker face. Don't tell people your motivation up front. So you're not
mhm,
really getting the full truth from people. So, and I think the only time people really let that barrier down is
mhm,
when they feel a sense of connection, when they feel like they're not being sold, because our immediate response is, they're going to sell me on something.
mhm,
Anytime there's a cold call, anytime there's any kind of first contact and it's cold, that's people's immediate response, is they're going to sell me on something. And the minute we feel that fear, the brain goes into
mhm,
safety mode, and it's going to put up the walls and the barriers, and you're not going to get the truth from people. So I think it's just about taking it slow, asking the right questions. And it's not about, there's no secret magic pill on the questions. It's, be interested in people.
mhm,
Like, really be genuinely concerned. If you're genuinely concerned and you're asking the questions because you really do care, then they're going to sense that. If they feel it's scripted and this is part of
mhm,
you trying to move them through the sales process, those walls they're going to go up. That's our natural response. We're not wired,
mhm.
we're wired to be safe. That's what our brain's job is. So naturally, we're going to have these safety responses.
So you're asking a lot of, it sounds like, open-ended questions, and I guess you want to disarm them right away. It's like some people say, "Hey, listen, like I saw you were looking at our MLS website. Nothing for me to sell here, but I saw you were looking at this specific property. Look, given the interest rate increases, a lot of people are a bit confused about whether they even qualify, whether it's now or 6 months. What's got you concerned about that? Do you have any concerns? Like, do you like, that's like a very contextual, almost like assumptive follow up. And then the simpler one is like, hey, we've gotten connected to the past through X. Crazy market, hey, how do you feel about it? Like those are kind of two
Yeah.
different approaches. Do you kind of rotate between those, or is there one that you found works more than the other?
Yeah, you know what? I don't have one set way.
Mhm,
I think I pride myself on being responsive to the people.
mhm.
I
Right.
think because that's what's worked for me, right?
Mhm,
And that's what I tend to teach from is being able to understand what is that person's style. You can tell, usually you can tell after a few minutes of conversing with somebody whether
mhm,
they're a D personality, an I personality, right?
mm,
And that's using the disc language, but you can usually peg people. And when you get those immediate cues of, oh, okay, this person's highly dominant,
mhm.
then I know that they're not going to want the small talk. And then I can
Right.
adjust my approach,
But you'll but
right?
you but you'll start with small talk to get them going and then try to
I'll see what
discern
their response is. Yeah, what
before
their
you get into
response is
business.
like.
That's an important thing, I think, 'cause some people
Yeah,
'cause, I think a lot of trainers say online, start a small talk, give them some context on who you are, so they're not like, "Who are you?" But I think the opener is really big, and it'll depend on the context, the weather, what's going on, but sounds like small talk is an important thing to discern their profile and then to kind of like, yeah, improvise, which you have to do. You can't just read off the script and not take in
no,
who they are.
yeah,
It's tough. It's like, improv class. Not everyone did it. I did it back in the day, and
right?
it's handy.
That drama class comes in handy, I'm telling you.
Totally. That's a lot of
Yeah,
drama these days too, so there you
yeah.
go.
Oh
Back to
gosh,
keeping
totally,
composure. Back to keeping composure.
totally.
Hey, super useful. I love to dig in deep, so I think those are, like, some very tangible things for people to think about is, yeah, like, again, like, the important things are talking to people and being a good listener and then speaking their language to, like, very much simplify, and, to put the reps in there is super, super important, and it's not like a thing you can do today and then tomorrow you forget, and then the day after that you get distracted. It's all about habits. So, I mean, you're all about reducing overwhelm. What are some habits or like defining moments you've had to build habits that keep you on track, reduce overwhelm, and just keep you motivated, especially when the market's a little slower?
Yeah. So I think for me, it's and again, the place that I coach from is really understanding that we all have traps that we fall into. For me, mine was perfectionism. I hid behind that for a long time. I wasn't good enough. Oh, I'm not ready yet. Or let me just spend a little bit more time doing this. And all of that, when you understand, perfectionism, procrastination, the whole idea of it, comparing and imposter syndrome, all of that is meant to keep you stuck, right? Because the brain is picking up on cues, whether it's your emotional response or just the way you're engaging in your daily habits, that something's not right, that you're feeling a sense of fear or uncertainty. And so it pushes you into these traps, right? Perfectionism, being mindful of having things done correctly is very different than being stuck in the trap of perfectionism. Same thing with procrastination, right? It's a fear-based response. So I think for me, it's understanding what are the traps that we fall into. And when you can identify that, then you can start understanding, okay, well, what's triggering me? I'm very much about getting to the source of things. I spent many years band-aiding, right? If, oh, I'm not doing well enough, let me buy this program or let me do, we can spend money on all these band-aid solutions, but at the end of the day, it comes down to what we're thinking and believing. And that for me was a big pivotal moment. And when I could understand why I was doing the things I was doing or not doing the things that I was supposed to do, then I could start building in better habits. Until then,
Mm,
that programming in my mindset was overriding everything. It didn't matter. It didn't matter
mm.
if it's not about knowing what to do. I think we all know what we need to do in our business to a good extent. It's just that we're not doing it.
Right. And to dig in more into that, I mean, hmm. Yeah, like there's a lot of deep psychology there, and that goes back to slowing down and kind of leaning into it. But I mean, did you want to share some things that I mean, and this is like either personal things with you that
Yeah.
might also be representative of the mass, 6 months to 2 years in mortgage agent or realtor. But like, what are the blind spots? Maybe things people procrastinate on and haven't dug in deep in, and then they don't get to the sales work. Like, what are blind spots or things that people actively procrastinate on? And then I'm sure people watching would love to hear just some quick solutions or again habits you
Yeah.
do to like stay centered and actually make sure you're being accountable.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's two things. You either have the hunter personality, which is that person that has no problems getting out there and meeting people.
Hmm.
And what they struggle with is that follow-up and structure piece because that's not where they want to spend their time.
Hmm.
So they will procrastinate on those things. They will fail to put in place structures so that they end up just flying by the seat of their pants most of the time. Then you have the other group of people where that lead generation is what's totally freaking them out. And they're not engaging in those activities because they're better at the follow up. They're better at implementing the structures and systems. And so they spend way too much time on those activities and not enough on actually getting the business. So I think for me, it's, being able to identify what are your traps. Are you somebody that finds lead generation easy to do and follow up the hardest, right? Where in that process do you get caught up? And then recognizing that our brain thrives on routine. And I know that those first groups of people who are the hunter gatherers are probably going, ugh, no, thank you. Like, don't schedule me. I don't want that. And I totally, respect and see where that's coming from. But we have to remember that our brain is our brain, and it's wired to keep us efficient. It's wired to have things feel safe for us. And anything that is built in a routine or predictability is going to help to calm that nervous system down. It's going to help to calm the brain. It's going to reduce the noise and the overwhelm. And then you're better able to take action. So I think some of the, very simple habits are planning your day out the night before. Most people think their day starts when they open their eyes in the morning, and talk to any successful entrepreneur who's hit 7 figures, 8 figures, doesn't matter what industry, they're going to tell you that they plan the night before in some way,
Mm.
shape, or form, whether it's working on their mindset, by reading something, powerful, inspirational, or journaling, or gratitude practicing, well, whatever it is, they're starting their day the night before, because when you go to bed at night, that's when your brain is doing its work. And the more you can
Mm.
help your brain filter and process and really reduce that nervous system, the more productive you're going to be the next day, the more you're ready to go the next day, as opposed to what most people do is open their eyes and say, okay, now I got to get myself motivated. Now I got to get myself organized. And before you know it, it's 11 o'clock and half your day
Mm.
is gone. So
Love that.
planning your day the night before, and that
Mhm.
doesn't have to be, a huge system or practice. It can be simply, what are the 3 things that I need to do tomorrow? I need to pick up this. I need to drop this off. I have to do this research for a client. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be big. But the minute you can identify those top 3 priorities, I call it that commit to 3 strategy. It's the minute you can identify what are the 3 things, I guarantee you, the moment you wake up, you're ready to go. Your
Mhm.
brain doesn't have to sit there and go, well, where did I have to go? It already has figured out the route, right? That you need to get there. It already knows what website you need to go to. It's already filtered and processed the information. So I think that's a huge
Mm.
one.
I love it. Yeah, it's quick. It's having that quick start to the day, and I mean,
Yeah.
you may even have that certain tab open. First thing you look at in the morning, you've got your runners by your door side, so you go for that run and get out of the way, right? So there's a lot of like James Clear, Atomic Habit, hacks in there, and that's again another conversation. But it's nice you touched on that, and it is
Yeah.
about making it easy to get through what your body might resist.
Yeah. And the more you understand how your brain is wired to function, the more you understand how important it is to do these things. Otherwise, they feel like they're not productive, right? It doesn't
Mm.
feel productive to work on your mindset. It doesn't feel productive to sit
Right.
there and make a note of 3 things. It's like we're always striving for the big thing. And it's never the big thing that moves us towards our goal. It's the daily small actions that keep us in line and keep us moving forward. So,
Hmm.
it's again, that in itself is another trap, where it's like we're always looking for the big thing, the big idea.
Mm.
And it's not. It's the people who have the discipline to stay
Hmm.
focused on the right things and
Hmm.
persistent no matter what. Those are the ones that actually produce results.
Oh, totally. And and so I think when you say big thing, very recently on the Grind Less Flow More podcast, we've been talking about the big thing being like a huge thing that is too big for people to wrap their head around. And that's like what is your celebratory moment? Like when you've made it, like where are you gonna be? And I think some people like don't actually have a visual. This is by the way to motivate you to do the small things. You're doing the small things,
Yes.
but there's no vision. How are you going to have the stamina to continue to do the small things, especially you get, slapped in the face with, XYZ setbacks. So, there's that kind of like painted picture of when when I'm at the success level that I want to be at, it's not just going to be what's in the bank account. Like, where am I that day? What's the setting? Who am I with? Like that, as far as visualization, which kind of falls into almost what you're saying on a nightly basis. Like, if you can visualize that like yes moment at the end of the next day, that's a way to prime your brain. That's kind of the micro, but the
Yeah.
macro, something that again at episode 5 of Mike Tan, it's like spend half an hour one day after a run in the woods on, well, I guess weekends realtors are usually quite busy. Maybe it's a Monday and like your brain is just on fire, like it's clear. And like if you can spend half an hour just like free write what is that like celebratory moment that you can visualize, either it's beginning of the day, end of the day, when things get tough, like, why am I doing all of this? I mean, I think that's the big thing that gets overlooked. And then as far versus the big thing, which is the material, which
Yes.
should be like a big win, and like those will come, but those are actually hard to predict. It's the predictable micro that's in your full control, tied to a bigger vision. Then the less big things, I mean, they're gonna come, right? So I wanted to actually weave that into your analogy, because I think that's something that gets overlooked, and you might have some comments on that, but I want to just make sure we talked about it, because I think it's very important.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is important. In fact, in one of my programs, that's the exercise that I take agents through.
Awesome.
Because here's what ends up happening. If you don't have a clear vision on what success looks like for you, then you end up chasing things that aren't aligned for you.
Mhm.
You end up getting caught up into the, oh, this is what success is supposed to look like, or this is what I'm supposed to be doing, as opposed to knowing this is what I want and this is why I'm doing the things that I'm doing. So it's really important to be able to give your brain the visual, because it
Mhm.
needs to have clarity. Your brain does some powerful things in
Mhm.
terms of helping you stay accountable, and in terms of helping you, keep those productive habits. But it can only do that if it understands your why.
Mhm.
And we can also filter in and layer in, things like the laws of manifestation and law of attraction, right?
Mhm.
All
Mhm.
of that comes into play. The more clear, what doesn't matter how we want to describe it, right? We can do it on a metaphysical, or we can use the science based.
Mhm.
It's the more clarity you have behind why you're doing things and what it is that you want to achieve, the easier it's going to be for you to actually get things done.
Mhm. And one way to get things done is, it's actually something that Marie and I spoke about a while ago. One of course, our mutual friends who introduced us, and it was say no to make room for yes.
Mm,
So when you have a precise vision of where you want to go, and you have the right coaching and mentorship, of course, hopefully through your program and through your community, you can be more confident and courageous to say no to what really are distractions. And it'll vary per person, but I think generally speaking, there's like I think a consensus on things that feel good and people say you should do, but like, let's face it, are a waste of time. So do you want to speak to, in general, what are some things that you think more agents should say no to, especially if they're in their first 2 years of really kind of accelerating their business and getting some kind of
yeah.
momentum, especially when there's a down market? You want to have momentum before you, ideally, and if not, well, you got to work harder. But how do you say no, and what are some things people should be saying no more to?
Yeah. So I'll open that up with a little story if I can.
Please.
On top of my perfectionist tendencies, I'm also a big people pleaser, people pleaser.
Mhm.
And I'll never forget, I was involved in Toastmasters. This was probably close to 12 years ago. And I was, building my brokerage business at the time. I was running our real estate division. I was really saying yes to everything. And I was finding myself very, very thin in terms of my energy levels, the time that I could spend, but I just couldn't stop myself from saying no, like saying yes to people. Somebody would ask me something, no problem, I'll do that. No problem, I'll do that. And I'll never forget standing in line, and one of the head people from Toastmasters came over and said, "We'd love to launch this XYZ initiative and we'd love you to lead it up." And I was like, and he could see that I was kind of like, okay, I want to say yes because I don't want to disappoint you, but oh my God, where am I going to fit this in? And he stopped me and he said, a good leader is somebody who can say no to things. And in that moment, it was like, whoa, like what a concept, right? Like, how come nobody
Totally.
taught me that, right? We're
Mhm.
just always taught to
That's
say
right.
yes, yes, yes.
Mhm.
And it was from that day on that I was like, wow, there's so much power in really being able to say, yeah, I'm not saying no because I'm disappointing people. I'm
Mhm.
saying, when we say no, we're saying yes to the right things.
Mhm.
When we say yes to something, we're saying no to other things that actually maybe are more aligned with us. So for
Mhm.
me, what was the question again? What should agents actually be saying yes and no to?
Yeah, yes, and just by the way, just quick, that's a great story. Quick note on that. I mean, that's how Steve Jobs skinned all of the Apple products on his way back to Apple and
Ah,
found extreme focus. In fact, his end celebratory moment was having a computer in everyone's hand.
mhm.
Anything that wasn't aligned to that, he was like ruthless in how he said no. So yeah, I think that ties back to sort of the vision and the idea of like, it's good to say no. It's and someone I interviewed recently too was Grant Finley Shears from Park Bench, right? He's big into real estate tech, and he just says not now with his staff, right?
Hmm.
And there's a way to say no in a way that's not going to offend someone or make them feel disheartened. It just, you know, you don't have to give a huge reason why, but you want to make them kind of feel good as well. And it's
Yeah.
just a little sidebar there. But yeah, that could fall into your next answer around how do you say no and what do you say no to?
Yeah, and I think it starts with the understanding of why do we have a hard time saying no? You know, why do we say yes to things that don't align with us? Why do we compromise what we really, really want? And it's because we have these fears around, is this person going to think differently of me? Is this, you know, are they going to feel badly? Or, you know, am I missing out on an opportunity? And so I think it's all that fear again that shows up. That I think when you understand how to say no, I think there's huge power in that. And so to answer that question, it would really be validate the person's request. You know, if they're asking you, it's probably because they think you can get it done, right?
Mhm.
You know, that saying, if you want something done, give it to a busy person. So
Mm,
take that as a compliment, but also kind of check in and say, okay, but does this fit in with my vision? Is this going to move me towards my goal, or is this going to serve as a distraction at this time? So I think, you know, that's that internal checkpoint that we have to go through. And then when we're actually vocalizing it, it's very much like, thank you, like acknowledge the request. Thank you so much for believing that I could, you know, I'm somebody that would be the right person for this job. Unfortunately, it doesn't really align with, you know, where I'm at right now. Can we check back on this a little later? Or if
mhm,
it really is a hard no, then say it. I think
mhm,
we're so afraid of being upfront because we don't want to come across as mean or ruthless or
mhm,
whatever that, you know, label we want to put to it. But I
mhm,
think it's all in the delivery. And
mhm,
if you can acknowledge somebody for the request and thank them, I think that that no then comes a lot easier.
mhm. I love that. Yeah, nope. That's it's just back to the personality types too, right? There's
Yeah.
that'll come in handy and when you have
It does
to
come in handy. It
be a
really
little
does.
courageous.
Actually, I should send you, I do have a link if you wanted to share it with
Please, of
your
course.
listeners, and
Yes.
they can go on, and the report that gets sent to them
Mm,
automatically, like I don't, doesn't come to me,
mhm,
but it does actually share with you your compatibility with all the other personality styles and how you can actually build better communication skills between the different personality styles. So it's pretty
yeah,
cool.
super handy, very tactical. People like tactics, and I think
Yeah.
it's important that we've zoomed out. Now we're zooming in. Look, both of our businesses and I think our mandates are to empower commission-only professionals, specifically in real estate. So, real estate agents, brokers, to get out of the grind and to find some flow in their life, to find some enjoyment, to find a way to systemize their business and just run in a way where like they actually have freedom from it. A big part of that is teamwork between the mortgage agent and the realtor. And let's face it, traditionally it's the agent gives the broker, you know, a referral, the broker gets it done, and off you go. I don't think that's good enough. I think there's got to be more of a collaboration between them, especially in days when the market is let's say taking a bit of a nosedive and like people are just not moving. So have you seen any great cross pollination where you have seen the broker really step up or the realtor step up to deliver something in a combined way for that customer experience to nudge leads along in a way that makes sense? I mean, this is just back to sales. Like, how do both sides really sell together rather than just like, you know, divide and conquer and just do that? Like, how do we come together as a unit?
Yeah, and I think that even goes with realtor to realtor, mortgage broker to mortgage broker, right? We
Sure.
tend to look at everybody like they're a threat. Right? And I
Right.
think that's how we approach our business, which then forces us into this lone wolf mentality,
Hmm.
which then only drives us further down that hole of this feels really lonely. I'm not, you know, I'm not enjoying what I'm
Right.
doing, right? Because we often feel like lone wolves out there.
Hmm.
And I think what I'm seeing now are the agents that are doing really, really well are
Hmm.
building their network. They
Hmm.
really are coming at it from a place of understanding that I can get there alone, but if I want to go further, I'm going to have the right people around me.
Hmm.
And they're building their networks. They're building, you know, they're making those relationships with their preferred mortgage brokers. They're making their relationships with preferred lawyers. And
Hmm.
they're building a network of people that they know will all have a place in the transaction at some point in that person's journey.
Hmm.
And so they're the ones that are being intentional about it. And I
Hmm.
think that word intentional is extremely important, because if you're not planning these things out in advance, then you're being reactive and you're just grabbing any old person off the street to fill a
Hmm.
void or fill a need. And
Hmm.
that, you know, that's not what the client necessarily needs. You want to be surrounded by people who think like you, who
Hmm.
want to deliver the same level of service as you, it really is a mirrored situation, right?
Right.
So I think it's being strategic and being intentional about who you want in your circle
Mhm.
and who's going to help you best service your clients. And that doesn't matter who you are. It could be the lawyer saying that, it could be the real estate agent saying that, it could be the mortgage broker saying that. But
Mhm.
everybody understanding that we can do this alone, sure,
Mhm.
but it's a lot better when we have other people to be able to work with.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, and it sounds like you're saying that some people just go with a mortgage broker to say as a realtor that was an old buddy, and he's like, "All right, that should be good," or like, "Oh, you use that mortgage broker, okay, I'll try him out," and they're like, "All right, let's get it done." But then going back to the disc profiling, you guys may not have, or you gals may not have the same personality traits, which eventually you'll figure out, and you'll probably not work
Sure.
together. But I think there's like is there alignment between us and then if we're a team and the customer's talking to both of us, likely on back-to-back phone calls, do we have an aligned customer experience that's educative, or maybe it's more on the pushy side? Who knows? Depends on your strategy. Whether you're a high, lead generation calling business or more through the referral partners. I think there's a lot of things you have to align on. Like, are our businesses aligned? Are our philosophies aligned? Are we going to even enjoy working together? Are our disc profiles aligned? And if they're not, are we conscious of how to work with each other to then in turn for the clients deliver a unified, adapted message and experience where the client is very anxious? You kind of have to like talk a little slower and like be more patient and maybe answer a few more late night, text messages or phone calls versus if someone's more of like, a very, let's say type A, it's got to be quick and you both have to like kind of be on it and reassure them they're going to win. Right. So,
Yeah.
some things there that it sounds like if you're intentional and you really go deep into relationships, and that might take like experiences beyond getting on a Zoom call, like go for a walk together, go for a coffee, do a run together, align on like human things that then can really make you both step back, especially if it's not as busy right now. And then that might be an ideation for your next first time home seller webinar, etc. And I do a lot of like, let's do co-marketing to get
Yes.
people the equipment they need to like make decisions. So I think, but you can't really get to any of the tactical co-marketing stuff until you're like super aligned and you're committed to doing something that's going to, of course, educate the market and help you add value together rather than just in isolation give advice. And then sometimes that gets lost between the cracks. So,
Yeah, and I think, you hit on something there that I think it's important to dive into, and that is, how do you find your clients? Because
sure.
if this is just a transactional approach to your business, then maybe it doesn't really matter who you're aligning with. But if you are being intentional about your lead generation strategies, and let's face it, a lot of people are moving into social media marketing as
Hmm.
a way to generate business,
Hmm.
then chances are, if you're successful at that, it's because you've niched down,
Hmm.
because you can't be successful in social media marketing and any marketing strategy, and if you're being too general, if you're trying to
Hmm.
attract and speak to everybody. So
Hmm.
typically anybody who's really engaging lead generation through niche marketing
Hmm.
has already identified who their ideal client is. They've already built out that profile.
Hmm.
They've already
Huge.
started, identifying that this is the persona that I'm dealing with and these are their needs. And if I'm the right fit, then wouldn't it make sense that the people I work with also need to have the same style as me?
Hmm.
Otherwise, yeah, you could end up that you're the nurturing one, then all of a sudden you send them to, somebody else that's going to help them in a different process, and they're very hard and direct, and that person's going to get like, oh, why did they send me there?
Right.
That's not what I expected. Right. So making sure that we're really, again, just being intentional. But I think it comes down to also how you generate your business.
And you're basically a matchmaker, right? And then yeah, I think there's just so many different ways to connect it all together. But yeah, that goes back into sales systems and having people, yeah, really just put themselves in the customer's shoes and start with those open-ended questions, and then you dive more in. So I think with that, where you can, I mean, wow, time flies. We're gonna start to put a bit of a wrap on this, and what I've jotted down as some of the key points, just to summarize, is it looks like. I mean, off the bat, like a lot of what you've done with your brokerage and your academy, it comes from like you've been in it. The beautiful things that you can actually learn from your mistakes and blind sides and put them in a curriculum and into a program so less people struggle as much as you and I have because you've given them like the playbook. Of
Learn
course,
from other people's mistakes,
right?
not just
Yeah.
your own.
Good point, right? But also you've got to scrape your knees a few times for you to really feel
Yeah.
those mistakes and do something about it. And everyone's got their own
Yeah.
journey. But I think that's very important and cool that you've obviously built that as your business. I think the mindset, mastering your mindset, and having a bit of that disc assessment. So really just self-awareness, which then in turn opens the door to who you collaborate with as a referral partner, what client you speak to, how you do your sales. Are you a hunter? Are you a gatherer? I guess you should put that as the same bucket. But you've kind of got like the people that want to go like talk and be social with no structure. And then you got the people behind the scenes doing the CRM follow-ups, which is something we didn't talk a lot about, but automation is
Right.
key.
Yep.
You've got kind of those two sort of personalities. You got to kind of assess. How can you play a bit of both of them? And actually back to the broker versus realtor relationship. I mean, a lot of mortgage brokers, if they have any kind of hustle, they should be doing a lot of the follow-ups because they're the ones who have new information on how much you qualify for, if that's changed, what's happening with rates, why act now. So there's a whole dynamic around co-marketing and really co-educating, which I think is massive. And really the wind down routine to manifest what's going to happen the next day. So in the morning you have that quick start is essential, and if you don't do that, you are a victim to reactivity, which is text messages being like, is this ready? And then you just get totally overwhelmed early. So start your day early, have an intention, and also know how to say no to things that knock you out of your creative genius and your flow. And that a lot of that's just clients who can be sometimes excessive, and there's an art towards how to tell them to like bugger off in a nice
It's
way,
boundaries,
right?
right? At
Setting
the end of the
boundaries
day,
too,
yeah, it's
right?
setting boundaries with
That's tough to
yourself,
know.
setting boundaries in your business, and then setting boundaries with other people.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing to do. So we
It is.
covered a lot. Any last words on your end in terms of action steps or just general things you want to leave our audience with? Those people that are again going into a down market, but are now with a rejuvenated sense of optimism because, of course, your lovely wisdom. Any last words?
Yeah, I think if you just be mindful of what's tipping you into overwhelm. If you're sensing confusion, if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you find yourself can't make a decision, then that right there is a clue that there's something going on, that either you're missing a piece, you don't have enough information, or there's a lack of structure. We didn't touch upon automation, but there's so many things that can tip us into
Mhm,
that overwhelmed state. And whenever you're in an overwhelmed state, you're not productive, and you need to have productivity in order to be efficient, in order to be effective. So
mhm,
if that's something that I think a lot of people are struggling with, but if it's something specifically that your listeners are finding that they're struggling with,
mhm.
I do provide some tips and strategies, all for free, on various platforms, through social media. But it's really about managing the overwhelm, and I think
Mhm.
that the minute you can reduce that stress level, the more effective you are, and the more enjoyable your work gets to be.
I love it, and that's finding true flow. And by the way, we'll have to when we meet up, we'll have to go to home meditation to the meditation studio in Toronto, and have a sesh there because I find
Oh,
you come out of a half-hour class, especially like even in the afternoon after let's call it an overwhelming day. All of the overwhelm and the things that actually are not worth being overwhelmed about, they dissipate, they're gone, and the things that are actually worth putting like
yeah.
mind power into happens. It's like you're kind of like looking for gold. The gold actually is gonna surface, and that's just quieting your mind. And that's
Yeah.
some very different topics that for part two we'll have to talk about. But yeah,
I would love
that
that.
meditative state, that way to like really like through a physical way, calm your body down and really focus on what your heart wants. I think is super key. Michelle, been a pleasure. I'm really excited to get this out to the community because we covered a lot in a short amount of time. So thank you again for doing this, and it sounds like we'll have to do definitely more than one segment.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor, and definitely up for round two.
I love it. Uh, I'm up as well with that. You're great. Thank you so much. And until the next time, everyone else hopefully will be in the process of leveling up, and you've been a key part of that. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.